I'm like a bit of like a schedule nerd. In fact, this morning I've been working on like a new schedule that's gonna,
Oh, really?
it's gonna fix
I'm sure
everything
this
for
one will
me.
work better.
Yeah.
In the first episode of Dialogue with Designers, we're going to talk to Jamie Brindle. For those of you who don't know who Jamie Brindle is, he's an expert freelancer and filmmaker who gives practical advice on Instagram on how to become a more prepared freelancer. Now in this podcast, we cover some really practical tips on how to grow as a freelancer, how to raise your rates, how to deal with some clients, and really just everything, including some really nitty-gritty stuff. So if that's something that interests you, make sure that you stick out until the end to watch the entire thing. And we're live.
Cool.
Thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, no worries. So right off the gate, there's a lot of our viewers who are trying to get into the freelancing game and just really want to know how to get started. I was just wondering, how did you get started in the freelancing world?
The freelance world. So I started freelancing when I was in high school. I started when I was 17 years old.
Really?
I would go door to door in my hometown and sell television commercials, local TV commercials. And so I would go,
Really?
say, do you need a commercial? I can film this for you, and then I'll go buy the airtime at like the local CBS or whatever.
Wow.
So I've been doing this for a minute. And it's just, there have been times when I've gone legit and tried to get an honest job, but those usually last 3 or 4 months, and I just think I can't do this. So I learned years ago that it's just not for me, I guess.
That's cool. So, wow. So selling commercials door to door. So how does that translate?
It's not how you want to do it, by the way.
Yeah.
That was the first lesson I learned as a freelancer, right?
So would you say that was sort of the hardest part of your experience and just going door to door?
Yeah, I mean that cold calling requires a thick skin, and if you don't have one, you develop it pretty quickly. I think there's hard parts at every stage of the journey. At that point, you're like a baby. You've got the baby fat, so the falls don't hurt as much. So it's like you don't know what you don't know. You don't know. So I feel like there's a certain I don't know, brashness that comes with that naivete that makes things sting a little less. So but there's tough parts at every stage. I couldn't pin down. I could probably pin down a hard part for every 4 or 5 years of my career.
Oh, so you've only been freelancing for about
Oh no, I've been at
years,
it for 15 years, but I think like every 4 or 5 years you come up to another, it's like a whole new slew of challenges that you have to acclimate to.
So how does the beginner experience that you had, how do you think that translates over to what you're doing now?
How so? In what ways?
So would you say maybe you said it made you develop some thick skin. How do you think that kind of translates over today?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times I get asked on Instagram or TikTok how where you get this kind of like slick, like smoothness with like client freelancer conversations and things like that. And the answer is that I've just had these conversations hundreds of times at this point, right? And so I think that's what that experience allows for is, things still, there are still things you'll encounter that you have never encountered before, but for the most part, there's not a whole lot of that shocks you. And so I think that's what experience brings, right? Wisdom is just all of your mistakes in the aggregate. So
yeah. So I guess after 15 years, you have quite a lot of wisdom, right?
Yep. Exactly.
How would you recommend someone to start freelancing today compared to, I guess, 15 years ago when you're selling door-to-door TV commercials?
Yeah, well, the benefit of today is the internet's prevalence, right? I mean, 15 years ago, I remember Facebook was this thing that the college kids had, right? That just to position you where we were at that time. You still needed a college address to get Facebook. So nobody was running Facebook ads. The digital. I remember making like a presentation 3 or 4 years into my career where I was trying to explain like the benefit of digital video. Like people didn't understand, so the
Yeah.
fact that we're all on that wavelength now, I think is huge,
Hmm.
and that applies to any industry, not just video, is that,
Yeah.
there are so many places on the internet that brands need content. I think that
Hmm.
that's a big one. But also tangentially is that there's a lot of places on the internet where potential clients hang out. So you don't have to be localized anymore. You don't
Hmm.
have to jump on the phone and cold call. You can go make your presence felt where your clients are online now,
Yeah.
which I think is a huge benefit.
Yeah. Would you say that Instagram is a huge help for you in gaining clients?
I don't really use Instagram to get clients.
Hmm.
Instagram is my it's just kind of my way of, I've got all this, you know, all these mistakes stored up, and I want to try and save people some heartache. And so we
Hmm.
started the social media channels for our fellow practitioners, our fellow freelancers. I get most of my business. The further down the road you get, the more you'll see that the inbound leads come from good old fashioned networking, word of
Hmm.
mouth, long term relationships with current clients, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that's where most of our new business comes from nowadays. But
Hmm.
we still get, we'll get work from LinkedIn, if in terms of social media.
Okay.
LinkedIn is a great spot for that kind of a
Hmm.
relationship to blossom.
Yeah. So obviously, I've done some research and I see that you do a lot of work on Upwork and things like that. How would you say that Upwork helps you in your freelance career, in your freelance world?
Yeah, Upwork is, a lot of people kind of pile on to these job markets, and there's some fair criticism
Hmm.
by all accounts. There's a lot of times, they can kind of foster a race to the bottom mentality, which is not what you want.
Hmm.
But the Upwork in particular, and we probably get 5-10% of our business from Upwork. It's in terms
Okay.
of the mix, right?
Hmm.
But Upwork is a great place to get in touch with, or to bid on jobs that agencies are posting. So I think that's the distinction that I make, where a lot of people will use Fiverr or Upwork, things like that, to kind of do
Hmm.
these one-off jobs where it's a brand that needs to get a website done, or a brand that needs to get, that needs an accountant, or
Yeah.
and uh, that's a tough road to hoe, because you're just constantly, you're in this churn of bidding and trying to
Hmm.
to beat your competitors on price and time. And
Yeah.
but what I look for when I'm on Upwork is agencies that need to fill a specialist slot, basically. So we do a lot of animation. That's not something that a lot of agencies have in-house. They may have an
Hmm.
editor in-house, but they're not going to have a dedicated motion graphics or
Hmm.
animation person. So they'll jump on Upwork, and I call it's kind of like they have to hit the oh shit button, because they have this job that they've promised their client, and
Right.
they can
Yeah.
they can take it halfway to the end zone, but then they need to find somebody to push it in.
Hmm.
And so that's what I look for on Upwork, because those
Hmm.
guys, generally speaking, I'm usually the most expensive bid on a job on Upwork. So I don't
Okay.
play the race to the bottom game, but it's, they're not looking for that. They're looking for somebody that's going to make them look good to their client, that's going to
Hmm.
get the job done efficiently, on time,
Right.
and that can, communicate effectively with them, and just kind of talk about, margin and budget, and
Hmm.
how to get them there. So that's
Right.
how I use Upwork.
So how do you see the competition when everything, I mean, I'm sure that you see that some bids are like $50
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
your bid is like $1,000, right? So how do you see that sort of different value that other freelancers are trying to give compared to yours?
Well, you have to be selective. If you look on, and if the budget for the project is just crazy low, I don't even bid
Right.
on it. I don't go with it.
Hmm.
So you have to look specifically for that scenario, right? Where
Yeah.
it's somebody that has, spent tens of thousands of dollars on the site, if not hundreds of thousands, and you know,
Yeah.
uh, you just don't want to get in the mud with, the $50 bids and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
that's a client that's probably not gonna, that's not on the same page as you are in terms of,
Hmm.
what they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of switch over a little bit, just to kind of talk a little bit about scheduling. How do
Yeah.
you kind of manage your time as a director and as a producer with your freelancing stuff? How does that sort of work?
It's a never ending journey of trying to, I'm constantly like, I'm like a bit of like a schedule nerd. In fact, this morning I've been working on like a new schedule that's gonna
Oh,
that's
really?
gonna it's gonna fix
I'm sure
everything
this
for
one will
me.
work better.
Yeah. So it's something, it's just like, as you go, you keep piling new responsibilities on and things like that. I
Mhm.
do like a block schedule where and this has been, generally pretty effective for me, is I try to spend half of my day developing new business and the other half delivering on current business. So that's
Okay.
how I like break apart my day, is, big picture, and then, small picture, short term stuff
Hmm.
for the second half. Because I've noticed that, it's easy to get caught up in what you have to do and be very reactive, have your whole day be reactive to what clients are asking for, and
Hmm.
what deadlines are coming up. And you can look up and a month will have gone by and you've spent no time on your business, which is
Right.
dangerous if you're trying to make a career out of this. So
Hmm.
if you have it on the calendar, I'm not going to answer emails. Like a lot of people, the first thing they do in the day is they check their email, and that
Yeah.
sets you up. You're immediately
Guilty.
reacting. Yeah,
Guilty.
exactly. Like, so it's like
Yeah, of
from
course.
from the moment you wake up, you're at the behest of other people, right?
Hmm.
And I think and that was me for a decade. So I
Okay.
think that the best way for me, and again, it's a schedule is a very personal thing. I like to
Yeah.
emulate my idols' schedules and things like that. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, what works for you is ultimately going to
Hmm.
be what wins. But for me,
Yeah.
it's to try and spend the first half of the day in the driver's seat,
Hmm.
focusing on the things you want to focus on.
And so when you're developing that new business, how do you generally do that?
That varies from, week to week. A lot of it's networking, a lot of it's kind of nurturing leads up the hill, answering a lot of questions, working on schedules and bids and things like that.
Hmm.
I've folded all of the social media stuff into that part of my day too. With no real end game there yet, but I'm sure that that's going to
Yeah.
result in some sort of, lead generation effort down the road. Um, we have a lead generation agency that we work with, that will just like send us. They do outreach, a very targeted outreach, and then they put
Hmm.
uh, appointments on my calendar. So I'm on the phone with people. It's things like
Hmm.
that, just to
Yeah.
kind of keep and to spend some time thinking about the big picture of your business. Where do we want to be 6 months from now? Where do I want to be 12 months from now? And then
Hmm.
every week check in on those goals.
Yeah. So does this agency go on a commission base or is it a flat fee?
It's a flat fee. The lead generation agency's flat fee.
Okay.
I asked them about commission, and apparently it makes sense. They said that, if they were a commission based, then part of their income would depend on their client's ability to close the sale,
Close. Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense. So I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
be on commission either if I were.
Yeah. So do you still do any cold calling, any cold emailing, or do you just leave it all to the lead agency?
So cold outreach. To answer the questions, I just leave it to them. But the cold
Hmm.
cold outreach is, and your audience may or may not already know this, but there's basically three types of lead generation: cold, warm, and hot, right? And cold, I think, is probably the least effective.
Hmm.
It's just a numbers game at the end of the day. There are ways that you
Yeah.
can shift the numbers closer to, favorable odds, but cold outreach is great for people who have time or people who have money. So either
Okay.
on at the beginning side of your
Yeah.
journey, or near the advanced stages of your journey
Yeah.
as a freelancer, cold outreach makes a lot of sense.
So either no money or a lot of money.
Exactly. So it's like
Exactly. Yeah.
either it's your only option, and you just got to hustle and start,
Hmm.
building a client base, or it's the visual I like to use is like where it's at now for us is it's like I'm at the table playing poker, and I've got a guy behind me doing the slots for me, right? So it's like
Okay.
Like that's kind of the cold outreach game in my mind. But
Hmm.
in terms of, if you're just starting out with cold outreach, um, you've got to hone your messaging. We split test messaging, so come up with 8 or 9 different
Hmm.
messages. Maybe one includes a link, maybe one,
Yeah.
leads with the person's name, maybe one doesn't
Hmm.
include a link. You get the point. And you just figure out over time what's getting the most opens, what's getting the most responses.
Hmm.
Pay attention to what type of people are responding so that you can shift your targeting to that,
Yeah.
position or whatever.
Is there
Um,
usually a good formula to follow, would you say?
uh, I, in my experience, the shorter the better. And I think nowadays I've noticed there's been a shift to just kind of get to the point. Like I know that like 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of sales experts and cold calling experts would say,
Hmm.
you have to ask them about their business, and then you have to like slyly bring them
Right.
to the point of getting on a discovery call. I
Hmm.
just think we're too savvy for that at this point. I think,
Yeah.
after 3 or 4 years of that on every social media platform, and the long copy ads and stuff like that, I think at this point it's just about finding somebody that needs you, right? So
Hmm.
like you don't have to go to the trouble of explaining the value of the service. Like odds are they're already looking for somebody like you.
Yeah.
And it's just, can we get on the phone and see if this is a match? Like
Right.
that's the attitude to take.
Hmm.
It's not, you're not trying to trick them into setting an appointment with
Yeah.
you. It's more of matchmaking.
Yeah.
you
Everybody
know
wins in the end.
yeah, exactly. You need
Exactly.
this, I do this. Let's see if the price is right. If not,
Hmm.
that's cool, let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that attitude.
How do you usually react when, well, how do clients usually react when you give them a price and it's way too high and it's just way above their budget?
Yeah, when I give a price, I like to talk about price in the first call. I mean, my sales cycle is pretty quick. It's just like I say, we've done, either through referral or networking or
Hmm.
the cold outreach that the agency is doing for us. By the time we get on the call, we pretty much understand that this is something that this person's looking for. So
Yeah.
let's just get aligned on vision and then talk some numbers and see if
Hmm.
if there's a fit here. So we talk about numbers on that first call, and usually it's after I've spent about 70% of the call listening and asking thoughtful questions and just getting on the same sheet of music
Hmm. That's a good way of
this
putting it.
business. Yeah, and exactly, and
Yeah.
so and then you can say, well, typically for what we've been talking about, we do this for X to Y
Hmm.
budget. I've seen this fall reasonably in this range. Does that sound
Right.
about right to you?
Hmm.
And what giving a bracket does is it gives them an opportunity to respond, um, in real time, so you can react to how they respond. But also if they'll either say, yeah, that's perfect. So, it's somewhere in the middle there.
Hmm.
Or they'll say, oh, that's it. So that at which point you say, well, there's ways that we can crank this up if you, because money's just an
Yeah.
asset. If they
Of
have more
course.
of this asset to
It's always
deploy,
relative at the end of the day, isn't it?
yeah, we can put that money to work, and
Yeah.
increase their return on this thing.
Hmm.
So I let them know that. If they say that it's, oh, that's way out of the ballpark, we were
Hmm.
thinking, half of that, less than half of that. Uh, then you figure out what their number is. You say, okay, well, what number did you have in mind? And let's see if we can back into a smaller version of
Yeah.
this for that.
Hmm.
Uh, that way you're looking for a win-win. You're not turning down money if it's a good client, if it's somebody that you want to work with. Uh, but ultimately we never come down on our rate. We just shrink the deliverable, right?
Yeah.
To and sometimes they don't want to do that, and you say, well, you know where to find me. If you end up talking to somebody that sounds like they can do it, and you
Hmm.
have some questions, something sounds suspicious, shoot me an email. I'll help you through the process. Leave the
Yeah.
door open to just be a good human being. But yeah, ultimately, if you can't make it happen,
Hmm.
just part ways amicably.
Yeah. That's really interesting. How did you kind of go from in the beginning where you, I guess, selling these commercials and going all the way to your profession now, I guess, which is animation and having your own studio?
Man, that's a long
That's a,
journey. that's,
I
I
guess just
think
the condensed version, if
yeah.
you will.
So I mean, it's when you think about it creatively, it's about this. I've been kind of on the same path all along the way.
Hmm.
When I moved to LA, I had saved about 7 or 8 months runway to make it work, to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And and I got my first gig out here like in the eighth month. It was crazy. It was very down to the wire.
Jeez.
But my freelancing journey was initially just kind of to pay the bills as I grew the film and TV stuff.
Right.
But quickly, the freelancing stuff, what happened was I clued into, I got my hooks into one industry. I
Hmm.
became the go-to like video guy for a lot of the big conferences, meetings, and events,
Hmm.
in America. And so that's how you want to. That's the best way to grow basically a freelance business is if you can find a specific niche where you solve a specific pain point. It kind of hacks that word of mouth process where uh, I was getting passed around within the industry of, hey, who did that thing for you? Oh, this guy Jamie. And
Yeah.
so you get done in about in like 2 years. You're where a generalist probably would be in 5 or 6 years. And so,
Hmm.
um, that picked up pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and started taking up a lot of time. And then we started broadening our client base to include kind of some of the big companies out here, some of the studios and things like that. And so
Hmm.
before you knew it, uh, it was a pretty sustainable business.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of overlap. So it's like I'll have
Hmm.
guys that run camera for me on a narrative project. I'll then turn around and send off to go shoot something for our business.
Really.
And so it's like you kind of it's been a pretty good symbiotic relationship, I'd say.
That's good. So, what I guess in the general overview, what advice would you give to someone that's just starting out brand new and they want to charge a lot of money for a website, but they don't really know how to yet?
I would say, so if you're just starting out, you want to charge a lot of money, you're not there yet.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
first off, a lot of guys, um, they don't have a portfolio, and they think of that as a weakness. I would say before you get out there,
Hmm.
if you don't have a portfolio, you got to make a portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So you got to show either with fake made up
Portfolios.
brands
Yeah.
or a redesign of a
Case
well-known.
studies as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Something like anything that you can do to show what you're capable of and how you're
Hmm.
unique, you're going to need that, even if you haven't done any client work before. So make it. And then, yeah, it's just, I mean, right out the gate, when you don't have a client base, you're going to have to compete on price just a little. That's
Yeah.
one of the tools that you have in your tool belt as a beginner, right? So it's like
Hmm.
if you're if it's a think of it as a balance, right? A, a seesaw, and the guy with the expertise,
Yeah.
that's a big weight. You've got to have little weights to try and
Yeah.
counterbalance that. And what you've got in your tool belt is availability.
Hmm.
So you can be super attentive to a client's needs. You can get things turned around really quickly because your schedule's
Hmm.
wide open. You can compete on rate.
Yeah.
Um, uh, you can have better soft skills than a lot of these you know vets,
Hmm.
these industry pros. You can be a better communicator. You can be a more
Yeah.
effective collaborator. So hone those skills, and build yourself a client base that's going to let you live, right? It's going to pay the bills,
Yeah.
and then you can start scaling up. I raise my rates frequently. I advocate for people that are just starting to raise their rates at least twice a year.
Hmm.
um and
How would you
it's
suggest
a
they do that?
it's a
Usually
slow
the
climb,
formula.
but yeah. So to raise your rates, you can either schedule it and just say, on January 1st and June 1st, my rates go up. You know, communicate that to your clients. You know, if it's a current client that's on retainer or something, you know, give them an extra 3 months at your current rate, but let them know, you know, that come March,
coming to an end.
yeah. And you know, and some of them may leave, but that's kind of the point. You want to allow your business to inhale and exhale as it grows. So that's the one, is to schedule your rate increases. And then another time that's ideal for raising rates is if you're slammed. Like if you're so busy, that's when I really experiment, right? So it's like, if you don't need the work because you're so busy, you're slammed for the next 2 months, and somebody says, hey, can you do this next month for me? You know, quadruple your rate or something. See what you can get away with.
Exactly.
Because that'll give you a good, you know, clue into where you need to be for the people you're talking to, the skill you're at. A lot of people undervalue themselves. I remember, you know, 10 or 12 years ago, I was on retainer for an agency and I doubled my retainer. And they were just like, okay. That was like, there was no, and I just went, shit, like how much money are they making off of me if doubling the retainer was a speed bump? Like they didn't even, you know, like
at that point you ask yourself if you should have tripled or quadrupled.
Exactly. So that's what when you're that, you know, so use the opportunity when you're busy, when somebody reaches out to just really go nuts, just see, you know, because if you don't need to work at that time, you know, that's a good research opportunity for you. But yeah, those would be my 2 ideal times to do it.
Cool. Well, just to kind of close off this entire segment or episode, with one last question, what would you say to those who want to start out on Upwork? What advice would you give to them instead of the usual ways where you kind of start out with doing some work for friends or family or someone you know, starting out on Upwork instead?
Starting out on Upwork, Upwork, it's all about, in my opinion, when you're just getting started, you should focus on building the social proof and becoming like the Upwork rising star, you know, whatever that badge is called, whatever they're calling it now. So go figure out what the criteria for that badge is. They've got it on their website, and, you know, check all those boxes. But then before you even think about making money on the site, focus on getting good reviews, right? So when I did like an experiment on Upwork 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, where I just went on, started a profile, and you know, at the time my rate was like, my hourly was like $250 an hour, and I was taking $50 jobs on Upwork.
Okay.
Just because it was like an off week or something, you know, like I just like do a little video for like a veterans charity and do a little video for that. And then, you know, within a month, you have all these positive reviews, and then you're having people reach out to you for, you know, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 jobs. And that's the benefit of that. You know, if the platform will put you in front of more people, more clients, if you have that social proof, and if you have that badge.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jamie. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Hopefully this was useful stuff.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully my audience also takes it on and take some of the advice that you gave out as well.
Yeah, awesome. If anybody has any questions at all, you guys know where to find me. Shoot me a DM or something, and I'll try to be as helpful as possible.
Absolutely. Great.
Awesome, man.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed that, let me know down below, and I'll try to make another one just like this one. If you guys have any questions for Jamie, just let him know down below, or get in touch with him on his Instagram, and I'll put that up here for you guys to know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.